So I hope everybody's happy with that. And if you don't want to be on the screen, obviously you can take your you can turn your camera off. And but when you're in the small groups, if you're going to groups, you'll be back on the screen. So brilliant. Lovely to see everybody here. So the reason I just want to talk a little bit about Share and Repair, which is the kind of the background to why we've kind of gathered this particular group of people to talk. And we came up with the Share and Repair project when there was an opportunity of seed funding from the Transition Bounce Forward project. And we were talking about what things we might want to focus on in Tooting, and sharing and repairing really brought together a lot of the things that we were already doing. So I was, way back in the early days of Transition Tooting, we ran a carnival, which was based on recycling as a metaphor for how we could use what we've already got better to reimagine our world. We've had restart parties for I think 7 years now. We've had Resparkle at Christmas in the library, where we make Christmas decorations out of recycled materials. We've had Sew Start. We've had lots of sewing workshops. So there was a real feeling of that. There was an energy around this kind of work. And also, meanwhile, in Tooting, all kinds of groups have been popping up around sharing stuff. So there's Tooting Reduce, Reuse, Recycle on Facebook, which is full of people offering things that they don't want anymore, or offering to share things. So we thought it would be really, anyway, it's been fantastic. And our first event really was our Repair Week last week, where we had a number of focuses. First of all, we just wanted to bang on about how important it is to share and repair all over Tooting, and we got lots of social media discussions. We got people sharing what they'd repaired, so you can check out the kind of, so people were kind of repairing stuff and then sharing online how they did it. We've got a Facebook group where people were posing questions like, there's something wrong with my Brabantia bin, what do I do about it? Or I can't mend this Hoover. Someone else will come in and come up with suggestions. So there's a real kind of community building around helping each other repair. We've been celebrating local repair businesses, and we've created a map online, which I can drop into the chat. And we're one by one, we're going around to the local businesses, and we're taking pictures of them and sharing those pictures online and sort of celebrating the work that they do. And then we held several workshops. So we held workshops with Oasis charity shops where they were doing upcycling. We held a workshop at the market. We had to cancel one with the school, unfortunately, because of COVID. We held a sewing workshop at the Woodfield Pavilion, and we held the first in-person restart party for 18 months. And COVID safe outdoors, just outside Mushkalasan. So it's been a fantastic week. But there's a look behind all of that action and activity is an idea about how could we do something really, really big ultimately in Tooting around sharing, repairing. How could we be a real focal hub for it? And there's a fantastic, I'm not going to post it in the chat because you'll look at it and start getting too interested in it, but somewhere, I can't remember, it's in Glasgow, there's a shop, an online shop, a shop front, and it's all about sharing and repairing. And it's got loaning stuff, it's got repair networks, it's got workshops. It's absolutely brilliant. And I just think I'd love to do something. It would be lovely if we could bring all this energy together and in order to kind of excite our possibilities for that. We've invited two really brilliant examples of sharing and repairing. So we've got both in the room tonight. And first we're going to hear from Joe Duggan of oh my god, it's gone completely out of my head. Library of Things. It's the heat. And then we've got Neil from Restart Project. So we're going to hear from both of them. And then we'll have a bit of an opportunity to chat to each other and then chat back to them and get questions answered and really sort of make use of the fact we've got them in the room with us. And then we might have a little bit of a talk towards the end of the session about what we might do in Tooting and kind of get our ideas bubbling up for that. And we'll finish at we finish at 9 usually, don't we, by 9 o'clock. So we've got about an hour and a half. Cool. Okay, with no further ado then, I will hand over to Joe, and you can tell us all about the Library of Things.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here in Tooting. Yay! The air smells different in Tooting. So I've got lots of really strong relationships with Tooting. I know it really well. Rich was mentioning Ravenstone. I know that's Balham, but I actually worked for 4 years at Broadwater primary school, so I know Tooting really well as a primary school teacher, and I love it. I've got a big soft spot for Tooting, and I used to live on kind of Mitcham Lane, close to the turn of the buses there on Southcroft Road. So I know the area very well, and I have a big soft spot for Tooting. So, and I've also got another interesting connection with one of the guests, which is Bernie. But interestingly, if I start showing my slides, a connection will be made there. So I'm going to, the most thing that scares me the most about is just setting these slides up. Once that happens, then I'm really relaxed, I think. So I'm just going to go to share. And you will, I think what you'll see first is my really messy desktop, and then I'll seamlessly move over to my slides. Bear with me, 30 seconds. Yeah, my computer is quite hot today, so it might just take a few seconds. So, cool, just give that a little second to land. So while that is sort of patiently loading, I think it's nearly there. It's just taking a few seconds. There we go. So I am here. I've been invited by Hilary and Rich to be here as part of Library of Things, and that is what I'm going to talk about. But I just wanted to sort of reference my roots in the movement that you guys are part of and that I'm part of too, which is the Transition Town movement. And that's very much part of the story of the Library of Things in Crystal Palace. And this photograph, which I decided to stick in about 30 seconds ago, I think if you zoom in, Bernie's in there somewhere, but I can't really zoom in on my, because Bernie, of course, worked with the church in Crystal Palace at St. John's. And this is an early picture. This is a picture we like to tell our story with, which is community gardening. There's transport activity. There is connecting up with the local community. There's lots of really interesting projects and outreach that Bernie was involved in as well. So I didn't synchronize this with Bernie, but I thought it was a really nice synchronicity that she was in there. So just to kind of reference that, where this story comes from the Transition Town. And I thought Hilary would probably be disappointed if there wasn't a photograph of a carrot. So just to give you a quick backdrop to the to what the Transition Town is in Crystal Palace. It's been going for 10 years. I've been involved since almost the very beginning. I'm not going to go into detail, but happy to answer questions later. We've had a number of successful projects, and our biggest, we've sort of got three really quite big projects that we're proud of. One is Crystal Palace Food Market, which involves dressing up as large orange carrots, but is now a really successful weekly market that delivers food to the community and has been working for 8 years, and is a really busy market, which I can say more about its impact if anyone's interested. That was the kind of early campaigning for it. That's what it looked like once it got going. So that's just a little bit of the background. The other big projects in Crystal Palace, Community Gardens is a fantastic place called the Paxton Centre. Lots of connections with churches and different community groups, and I can share more about that if anyone's interested. But I think it's part of the network and the kind of like the fertile ground through which the Library of Things landed in Crystal Palace, or evolved in Crystal Palace. Yeah, so I thought it was important to reference that. So as we're up in Crystal Palace in 2015, 16, and we're aware of this pretty cool project down in West Norwood called the Library of Things. It's in a shipping container. It's completely manned. Not manned is completely inappropriate word here. It's completely womaned by fantastic volunteers and led by three very dynamic women who are trying out this idea of a lending library a borrowing library where people can borrow items at affordable costs. It starts in West Norwood with over 400 things in its first prototype, and then it has evolved to a much swishier, much more professional model that we have now, which I'll speak about in a second. I was joking with Hilary and Rich before this call that this slide shows a mixture of quite corporate slides that the team sent me and a few messy ones that I chucked in myself, which tells its own story about how the thing has emerged. So we wanted to do a Library of Things in Crystal Palace. So it's worth saying that this is still me in my role as the co-chair of Crystal Palace Transition Town. Over time, I've actually ended up working for the Library of Things. But in that role, we were really interested. But as volunteers, it just seemed quite demanding, quite challenging. It just seemed a lot. So what happened was we got into partnership with the Library of Things as an organization, which really helped to make it happen. About the Library of Things, it's worth sharing a little bit of their narrative. So since 2014, they've been experimenting in West Norwood with prototypes. First of all, in the actual library in West Norwood, then in the shipping container in the middle slide. It's kind of like scaling up and professionalizing the model as they go. They trialed in the middle part, they trialed over 400 things. Then there's actually a step missing here, but it's just to kind of be a little bit more smooth with it, I suppose. But in the middle, before they got to this rather swish kiosk in the picture in 2018, there was an interim step where they had shelves in the library which were locked. But now they have this fantastic self-service kiosk system, which is really thinking about creating a scalable, interesting model where people can borrow things from the from inside the kiosks and use them to I'll say a little bit more about what's actually in the kiosk. So that's just a little bit of the background, and that was in partnership with the hub and with the transition town. So the mission of the Library of Things is to make the borrowing better than buying for people and planet. And I'd also recommend having a little look at the website. This is kind of our new, this is kind of where we've got to in terms of our offer of things. This is slightly, I mean, almost exactly what our leaflet looks like now, but it might have changed slightly. We offer a honed down but popular list of things that people can borrow from hobbying, DIY, gardening, adventure, cleaning, and hosting. I'm happy to talk in more detail about where we came to those decisions and why we use those things and how that in more detail there if anybody's interested. So that's the offer. I'll talk a little bit more about Crystal Palace in a second. Maybe I'll just go back. Sorry, I feel like it's worth going back to this kind of moment. So the Library of Things in Crystal Palace, from this kind of like shoestring idea and this thing that was kind of connecting with the transition time, I realized that to make it work in an impactful way, as someone who's been involved in, like many of the people in this space, someone who's been involved in campaigning for quite a long time and trying things and making things work, realized that there was a potential to have a really professional and effective lifestyle addition to the community where people could come and borrow things and really borrow them, not borrow them once a year or not borrow them at the beginning and then never try it again because they didn't enjoy the service, but have a real service that really connects into the community and people return to it and use it for things that they want as part of their life. So they really are borrowing rather than buying. And I think that's kind of like an interesting point to come back to perhaps, because one of the little jokes that we have within the Library of Things is when we're doing the marketing, it's like, we don't want people that love the concept. We want people that actually want to use it. And that's quite an interesting sort of dynamic. So I kind of feel like maybe this is all old hat to you guys, but in terms of like, maybe it's worth stating that 80% of household items are used less than once a month. And for communities, 1 in 7 shops are empty. There's a real potential, as Hilary was alluding to, around connecting up what can a Library of Things bring to the community as part of a mix as well as just on its own. And the other kind of classic example that we use a lot in the Library of Things is that your average cordless drill is used like for something like 15 minutes in its life, and the rest of the time it just sits in a drawer. So why have a drill in, why have one drill each, creating all that landfill and energy and resource when we can have a drill in the community that people borrow when they need it for that 15 minutes? So that's actually, I might skip this one. I mean, if it's interesting, this is a bit more about I might skip that one. It's just telling the story of how the actual organization works, but I'm happy to come back to that if it's interesting.
I'd like to hear that.
Yeah, sure. Okay, sure. I've just can't. Yeah, no worries. So the Library of Things, now I'm talking about library, I'm not talking about as a transitioner anymore. This is Library of Things as an organization. It's a social enterprise with a mission lock. It's held accountable by, it has what it calls, the mission lock is a group of people who ensure that the social enterprise sticks to its mission, which is to deliver affordable borrowing to communities and is respectful to people and planet. I've got another slide actually that touches on this. So we're now open or launching in 5 London neighbourhoods and soon 5 more. So I can say a little bit more about that. That's kind of my job now. So I work on the local community marketing. So we're open and active in Crystal Palace. We have we've been active in Merton since March, just up the road from you. We have launched in Hackney Wick in late May. We're opening in Kentish Town in mid-August. Finsbury Park mid-September-ish. These ones are slightly more ish. Dalston October-ish, and then there's a few more lined up with the idea that we're going to be opening 10 by April next. There'll be 10 in total plus Crystal Palace by this time next year. I can certainly share more information about all that. That's my kind of day job now, is working with those sites, so I can share quite a lot of information if people want to know more. Working in partnership is a good way of, so there's a community partner, but there's also, what's the right word to call it? Local government partner, perhaps, might be the best phrase, because it's usually a council partner. And they work together with the Library of Things to deliver in an area. And it also ties in, there's a little bit more about this at the end, but it ties in with council budgets. And there's potential to unlock some council budget to deliver a Library of Things in your area. And I was talking to Bex today, who's one of the directors in the Library of Things, and there's a lot of interest within councils for this model. And it's not just interest, the councils are, there's a pipeline with councils committing, and some councils are even committing to 2 Library of Things within their borough, 2 London councils committing to more than 1 within their borough. So it's kind of like, I was in a meeting today with Islington Council, and they're just bedding down on their plans. So it's moving quite quickly. So a little bit more about how it happens in a community. Sorry, I'm just kind of like trying to adjust things a bit. So what sort of happens is, what we did in Crystal Palace is we crowdfunded for 10K to help unlock it. That's not always essential if you can unlock the money from the community, but that is part of what we did. As the model now scales up, they're inviting communities to express their interest on their demand heat map, so we can get a measure. We don't want, as a Library of Things, as an organization, to go into communities now where there's just a few people interested. They don't have a good site. There isn't a place with good footfall. I can share more about that if you want. It is a social enterprise, so it does need to eventually turn a profit and pay its own way. So, and that profit all goes back into the project again. But it does need to do that. It isn't a long-term charitable enterprise. It has to sustain itself on some of the livelihoods attached. Let's see. Yeah, just that you can, it's got a great, I'd recommend having a little look on the website, either on your phone or on your computer. I'm pretty proud of the website now. It's all our own software. You pay as you go with the average borrow price at £10, and we have concessions rates as well. They're just being updated at the moment, but they'll be re-released later this month. That's just a quick shot of the kiosk in Crystal Palace. That's the sort of designer shop, but it really does look like that. It's quite exciting. A little bit on the skill and repair stuff. So it's really, I didn't want to dwell on this too much because you've got Neil coming next, but I think there's a really strong relationship between the Library of Things and the repair community. And it's very much part of our model in Crystal Palace was to bring these two in relationship together. So we had sewing classes, DIY classes, and really lovely, successful repair parties. But I do have to kind of like, I'm not just saying this because Neil's here. That was done with fantastic support from the Restart community, from the kind of network of volunteers there was fantastic. It really was. I don't think it would have been anywhere near as good without them. So so something about this kind of like building this relationship with things. I'm literally getting things thrown through the window from the children next door. Can you believe that? There's something about building this relationship with the circular economy, with how we use things, how we what our relationship is with landfill, what our relationship is with purchasing. And just one thing I hadn't scheduled to say, but I think it's really interesting and might tie in with your vision and stuff as well, is that unfortunately at the moment with our model with the Library of Things, because we're so busy, at the beginning we used donated things a lot right back at the beginning, but we don't do that anymore because it's not practical to take the amount of donated stuff that people want to give us. But I think that's worth just putting out there. Maybe it's gonna be an interesting thing to talk about later. It saddens me that we can't take it all, but yet part of me thinks that's not the problem we're trying to solve. That's another problem with people just purchasing too much. So I just think that's an interesting one to think about. So it's a common misconception that we're going to take everything that people donate to us. It doesn't actually work that way. Where would we put it and what would we do with it? That's just a list of our sites that we've opened across London. Dalston isn't just open yet. Kentish Town is getting installed on Sunday. Very exciting. And here's some impact figures from Crystal Palace. Now, these are slight projections because it's over 4 years. So we've got 5,000 people doing local borrowing. There's potentially a lot of savings of money in terms of the amount of purchases, lots of extra visits to the local community. There's a lot of waste prevention. That's based on some assumptions. And then, of course, there's a carbon footprint saving. There's a lot of feedback to suggest that people who borrow then become more conscious of what they're doing. So they're 60% more likely to repair or recycle. And then there's a crossover in terms of skills events and the kind of things that people can do. And there's also some livelihoods created. I feel like we're going over time a little bit, but I'm nearly at the end here. Just some examples of the kind of people who borrow. It's quite funny, Bernie. This is a rival vicar from Crystal Palace, Abby. He's another lovely woman in one of the other churches, and she has used she's using the hedge trimmer there, and so people use it for different reasons. It can be to do with affordability. It can be to do with being inspired by environmentalism. It can be they can get involved in volunteering because they want to connect with the community. But one of the things that is a little bit like worth saying, it's been a learning journey for me. It is value-based, but it has to be convenient. It has to be something you can fit into your normal life as well. It's not just about the virtues and the principles behind it. And that's what the Library of Things have had to work hard on, is making it a really convenient offer. And then just a little bit on the vision. This is from the Library of Things messaging, but it's quite interesting. They don't mention transition towns by name, but the Library of Things in every neighborhood, part of a thriving green, locally led ecosystem. So with community kitchens, living rooms, repair and repurposing. And of course, that very connects quite strongly with the transition town movement. And it's very much in relationship with other things that are going on as well. Just a quote, this is from our launch when we were allowed to do things like this in 2018 in Crystal Palace. And that's a quote from our partners in Upper Norwood Library Hub. These are some of the people that we've partnered with so far. And there's more to add to that list. So you can see there is the councils there, or some of the larger kind of government bodies. And then then we tend to work with community partners as well, because that allows us a way to shape the thing in relationship with the community, get the amount of engagement that we need to keep the model successful, because for a Library of Things to work in a community, it does have to get used. What do you need to make it work? Now, this one, I thought about taking the slide out because I know it always gets a little bit of reaction, but I think we're going to be realistic and honest tonight. So high footfall community space is needed. It needs to be high footfall. It needs to be somewhere people know where it is. It's not going to work if it's one of our new sites is a little bit challenging. So we just have to work harder on community marketing. But if it's in a really good high footfall site, it really makes a difference. And this 40K upfront fee sounds like a lot of money, but that's 2 livelihoods, the really sophisticated kiosks, all the back end software for 2 years, and 2 livelihoods for 2 years, and the stock and everything to make it happen. And what I actually talked to Bex about this, and I said, Bex, if I say 40K, that'll get a reaction. And I said, well, you can tell them that it costs nearly 15K just to do the shipping container. And then all the volunteer hours on top of that. And it's something about doing something professionally. Oh yeah, the other really important and interesting thing that we've got now is borrower support. So if people have problems booking and borrowing, there's online borrower support, which we never would have realized we needed. And this money tends to come through councils or other bodies as part of their delivery around cutting waste and addressing climate change. I think that's me. Thank you. And that's just part of our team in Crystal Palace.
Brilliant, Joe. That was really great. That was everything that I wanted to know about Library of Things. Perfectly encapsulated. We'll talk more when we have come to talk together at the end. I'm going to go straight on to hear from, so we can see how the two things fit together. I'm going to go straight to hear from Neil about the Restart project. So over to you, Neil. And Joe, you might need to take your screen share off.
Yeah, bear with me 2 seconds.
Fantastic.
Sorry, it is coming. Cool.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, indeed. Brilliant.
Cool. Okay, thanks. Thanks a lot for that, Joe. And I'm a happy user of the Library of Things as well, the Crystal Palace one. I got a steam cleaner from there a couple of years ago to help clean my flat out without having, exactly as you said, I would use a steam cleaner maybe once a year, if not less. So it was brilliant to have that resource. And it's great to see that it's opening up in more places, because when it was just Crystal Palace, I had to travel quite away from Oval to get it. But yeah, it'd be brilliant to have them all over the place. Okay, hi everyone. So I'm Neil from the Restart Project, and we're a charity based in London trying to help people foster a culture of repair. So we do this by doing things like helping people fix the things that they own. So this is like broken toasters, kettles, etc. In events that we kind of generically call community repair events, but we tend to call them restart parties. You might have seen them as repair cafes and repair parties and fix-it clinics, etc. And at Restart, we also look at the bigger picture around repair and the barriers that we encounter when we're trying to repair things. And we're involved in campaigning to try and make it easier for things to be fixed in the first place, so that when we're trying to fix it, we've got the opportunity to actually do that. So yeah, tonight I'll talk about that work that we do around community repair and the campaigning side of things and the bigger picture around the right to repair, as well as what we think is the reason to repair. Why should we be doing this? So just a little bit about me. I've been a member of the Restart Project since 2017. And my main role there is kind of working on our websites and our web applications and the data collection that we do, recording information about the things that we fixed at repair events. But I also do volunteer at repair events myself when I get a chance. And I used to live in London. I'm back up north now in Cumbria. But when I was there, I used to volunteer in Brixton and at a few of the Tooting events, mainly working on laptops and tablets and software and things like that. So a good place to start is, what is community repair? In case you've never come across them before, a community repair event is setting up in a local community space, inviting people to come along with their broken things. So kettles, toasters, mobiles, laptops, anything with a plug or a battery, pretty much, with some limitations. And with a team of volunteers with repair skills, we help people fix their broken stuff. And like I said, you might have seen this as a repair cafe, a restart party, a repair party, etc. And obviously, Restarters Tooting has been organising restart parties regularly. I think Hilary said going back to 2014, which is amazing. And if you've ever been, you'll know that it's not just fixing things, it's fostering this nice community feel. It's a community space. People are sharing skills with each other and we're helping people feel empowered to fix things and kind of want things to last longer. And then there's a few shots here from, on the left-hand side is from the event on Saturday, people fixing things, and then a few fixes over the years as well. And this is like, it's always so cool to see all of these like happy faces and things being fixed. And if you think about like each of these photos, it's at least two people being sat down for a couple of hours, sharing skills, having a chat and figuring out how to make something last longer. So it's a real community thing. So we've been Restart ourselves. We've been involved across London, helping set up and facilitate different groups running their repair events. With things such as like just a kit on how to get up and running and how to get started, and helping with support with insurance and things like that. And another area that we've been working in and kind of facilitating with groups as well is the collection of data on the repairs that we do at Restart parties. And so we've recently partnered up with other sort of community networks around the world to share their data as well. And so that we collect this so that we can kind of report back on the things that we're seeing in community repair events and the barriers to repair that we're facing when we're trying to fix things. And we bubble this up into campaigning work and campaigning for the right to repair. And at Restart, we've made some software, and this is part of what I'm involved in, to help groups collect this repair data, and then to enable reporting back on a group's social and environmental impact in their community, as well as I said, kind of bubbling up some of that information about why are we finding it difficult to repair some things, and allowing us to campaign for things to be more repairable. So you can see here, this is some stats from Saturday's event. So we've got a list of the things which people brought in, how old they were, a little bit of a description of the problem and the solution, and if we could fix it, or if we couldn't fix it, why not? And we get a nice log of the things that we've seen, as well as some of the social and environmental side of things. So how many people came, how much electronic waste we diverted, and how much CO2 we diverted by repairing these things. And we can see that at a group level too. So this gives you kind of view over all of the events that a particular repair group has run, what their impact has been. So we can see Tooting's had 11 events, 237 people have brought their broken things in. There's been 246 hours volunteered, maybe more. 172 kilograms of electronic waste prevented, and nearly 2 tons of CO2 emissions diverted, which is awesome. So yeah, well done, Tooting. And so, as I said, we use this data to help surface, as well as the social and environmental impact, some of the issues around obsolescence and barriers to repair that we see. Why is it hard to fix the things that we're trying to fix? Why is it difficult to open up a device or find information? Or is it hard to find information about the things that we're trying to fix? And if we needed a part, you know, why was it so difficult to get access to that part? And this feeds into another aspect of our work, so the campaigning and policy side on the right to repair. So first of all, what do we mean when we ask for the right to repair? So kind of in a nutshell, it's the right to repair is kind of a global movement to advocate for everyone having the right to fix the products that they own. And the campaigning aims to change regulations on how products are made in the first place, to make them easier to repair and more affordable to repair, and as well as expanding our rights on what we can and can't do after we've purchased something. And this is kind of the 3 pillars of the right to repair, and this is from the repair.eu website, which is the home of the right to repair campaign in Europe. And so we want good design of products. Like, products should not only be designed to perform well, but also to last, to be durable and to be repairable when that time comes. And so we need design practices which support ease of disassembly and ease of repair. And we want fair access. So we think that repair should be accessible, it should be affordable, and it should be mainstream. And repairing a product shouldn't cost more than buying a new one. And there shouldn't be any legal barriers or other barriers in place that prevents individuals and independent repairers and community repair groups from actually being able to repair broken things. And the final pillar is informed consumers. So we know that citizens want to know if their products are built to be repaired or whether they're just destined to be disposable. And so we want information on repairability of things made available at the point of purchase, so a citizen can make an informed choice if they get to the point where they do need to buy a new thing. So these three things that we want to see access to spare parts quickly and affordably. We want to see access to information, so everyone has got access to repair manuals for the lifetime of a product and access to the spare parts as well, like I said. And we want design for repair. So we think that manufacturers should have, there should be minimum design requirements to ensure that things are easily disassemblable and it's easy to replace key components across all kinds of, a whole range of product categories, but kind of with the campaigning starting with smartphones and laptops and other IT products. So here's some of the campaigning that's gone on in Brussels. This is the SAD fridge, which was very popular when the right to repair legislation was going through about white goods. And at the moment, there's discussion and legislation around printers and the repairability and longevity of printers. So there's been campaigning going on around that as well. And we do campaigning within the UK as well, particularly at Restart. And we produced a thing called the Manchester Declaration, which was kind of an open letter to policymakers, product manufacturers and designers saying, you know, we want the right to repair. We are community repair groups, we're concerned citizens, and we want to be able to repair the things that we own. And that's been signed by loads of community repair groups, Tooting's one, quite a few MPs as well from cross parties, and some environmental groups and allies as well, and Library of Things are in there as well. Thanks for signing that, guys. So that's kind of the right to repair and how we feel the rights that we should have to be able to repair the things that we own. What do we feel like? What's the reason to repair? Why do we want to be able to repair things? So electronic waste is a huge problem, and it's the fastest growing waste stream in the world. Globally, there's 53 million tons of e-waste produced each year, which is kind of a hard to grasp figure, but it's the equivalent weight of 350 cruise ships worth of electronics. And you can see in the UK, we have the second highest per capita amount of e-waste produced. And if we're chucking so much electronics away, then obviously we're buying a lot of it as well, and then lots of new electronics are being manufactured. And there's a kind of embodied impact of the manufacturing of electronics and electrical devices. There's loads of resources are used in the manufacture of these devices. And there's embodied CO2, embodied water, and lots of different critical raw materials that are used in those. And as you can see here, for example, with one of the iPhone models, 80% of the CO2 equivalent emissions is in the production phase. So as much as we can offset the production of new things, we can offset the CO2 and environmental impacts associated with those things. Beyond the CO2, there's lots of impacts around the raw materials that are used in the creation of electronics and electricals. So there's lots of other raw materials that go into them, and there's some less hidden impacts associated with the mining of all of these environmental exploitation and human exploitation. And there's a good website that we've worked on called materialsmatter.eu that's got a little game you can go through to find out more about that. And beyond the environmental impacts, there's just consumer frustration and just frustration at things breaking and not being able to repair them, or not just having the ownership over them to like do what you want with it. And there was a report a few years back from Green Alliance showing that there's a real demand from the public to be able to repair, and kind of strong support for pushing government to push manufacturers to make things more repairable and recyclable. Coming to 15 minutes, I'm not too far off. Yeah, basically we want to move away from this kind of disposable consumerist society where we end up being like the humans in the world of Wall-E, where we're just buying things constantly and throwing them away. So this is kind of our vision for the future. We could maybe come back to that. I'll go through it quite quickly. But essentially there's a culture of repair. People want to repair things, and people have the skills and the support to be able to do that. So here's some ways that you can get involved. Come to an event. They are slowly starting to happen again, in-person events. As we said earlier, the first in-person event for a long time in Tooting happened recently, and we hope to see more of those. And even if you can't make it to an in-person event, there's plenty of online events taking place where people help each other fix things online at the moment as well. We have a petition to sign for the right to repair, a real right to repair in the UK, which goes a bit beyond what was recently announced by the UK government. And also another little thing you can do online with regards to the data that I mentioned. So the data that we collect across all of these events and with other networks, we've got a little kind of citizen science online micro task that you can do at the moment, which is looking at some of the stuff that we've recorded about fixes and the barriers to repair, and doing analysis of that to then feed upstream into the policy discussions. And it's a great way of getting involved and learning a little bit more about what it means to repair something and what the barriers might be. And that's me. Thanks very much. I look forward to chatting.
Brilliant, brilliant. Thank you, Neil. I am so glad that we've recorded this, because it's just such a good resource for hearing about these two projects together. I'm really, really pleased, and I'm going to be sharing it with lots of people afterwards as well. I'm very proud of Tooting Restart, that amazing amount of stuff that we've said. And I want to do a big shout out to Mike Graham, who's here. You can't see his face, but he's our chief fixer in Tooting. He's keeping himself behind. He's hiding his light behind a bushel at the moment, but it's just a big shout out to Mike. Brilliant. So I think what we'll do next, we're going to allow you all to have a chance to have a chat, and in order to make that kind of fairly easy, we're going to go into small groups. And I think Neil and Joe, if you could go into a group as well, that would be good. And really to think about what you heard, what questions you might have, what commonalities you saw between the two projects. I was interested to think that both projects, I think, initially were seeded within a transition. I think that's really interesting. I think Ugo and Janet were part of a transition group when they first started talking. But anyway, any commonalities you see, and also thoughts about what we could do locally, thoughts about how we could sort of work with these ideas. So we'll go into groups. If Rich, if you could put us into groups for about 10 minutes, and then we'll come back and have a kind of shared discussion, if that's all right.
Fantastic. Yes, I'm just ready to. So a little note will pop on your screen inviting you to join a breakout group. If you just click yes or accept or whatever affirmative word Zoom throws at you, it'll beam you down the tubes to your breakout room. Just to say to those who have chosen to put the camera off, when you're in your breakout room, you won't be part of the recording. That's not the way it works. In fact, I'll pause the recording while everyone's in breakout rooms. So if that makes you feel more comfortable to pop your camera on and say hi to a small group, then go ahead and do that. Okay, so we'll see you in 10 minutes. I hope that sent your minds a buzzing. Yeah, we'll see you then. Here it goes.
Welcome back, everybody. Hope you had a good conversation. So what we're going to do now is we're going to spend a little while in the room together, just sharing any thoughts or questions or observations or ideas that you got from that conversation and from the presentations that we heard earlier on. And we'll do this just by, if people want to put their hand up or if they want to put something in chat, just you know, say, put a Q or an H for hand in chat, and then I'll just pick up from you. But it will fairly free and easy. There's not that many of us, so we don't have to be too polite. But I think Richard actually has got a question to start us off with.
I do. I was thinking about a question while you were speaking, chaps, and for the room, really. So this is my question. So we get programmed to purchase. We're pummeled by advertising to buy more. Is it a David and Goliath battle? And what stars do you see aligning at scale to change behaviors beyond the interested pioneers like we have here tonight?
I guess that's for Neil and Joe and anybody else who might have an answer to that up their sleeve. I've got one thing that I'd like to say. That's terrible, isn't it, to answer it myself? One thing I've seen is that there's starting to be campaigns to stop advertising in some cities. They're actually cutting back on the advertising. But Neil or Joe, any thoughts? Joe, I think you're mute if you're...
This isn't a particularly intelligent, well, no, this is just a really pragmatic answer to that, is that we have 100 boroughs a month in Crystal Palace now. We're creeping towards that in Merton, because that's my day job, is to check the figures with the person who's promoting there. So I can almost tell you to the number how many boroughs we've had this month. So it's creeping towards 80, 90 boroughs per month in Merton. Hackney Wick is around the same, and Kentish Town. So because it's a business, because it is about drawing people in, and those numbers are growing. And I also know that Bex Trevelyan from the Library Thinks team handles the what they call the pipeline. They've had, it's like managing the demand. So there's a lot of demand from councils and from bodies, and there's too much demand actually. So they're actually having to find strategies to deal with that. So they're definitely, in terms of, just to speak about the Library Things for a second, there is a lot of demand and a lot of people switching over. Yes, there's a bit of work to do. That's my job and other people's job to do that. And also, in another, just a quick nod towards Neil as well, is that in some ways, if anything, our repair parties in Crystal Palace became a victim of their own success, because we literally had queues out the door. So I do think there's a lot of hunger and a lot of momentum out there.
Brilliant, thanks, Joe. Neil, is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I guess to say, like as Richard said, it's a massive problem, and I think there's like a number of different strands to it, things that do need to align to change it. And there is to some degree the behavior change, so like individual behavior being part of it. And we saw in that the Green Alliance report that I mentioned, and as Joe was just saying there is a huge demand. Like, people really want to be able to repair things, or have things last for longer, or to be able to borrow things. So there is that demand there, but then there's a lack in some of the policy to actually be able to do that, or even just the kind of economic incentives. Like, you may really, really want to repair your kettle, but if it's going to take a month and you may not even get it fixed, and then maybe it's £10 for a new kettle from Argos, it's like really hard to push back against that. So that's where some of the kind of legislation side of things and like the right to repair, we think, can help make a difference in making it so that it is easier to repair a thing, and it doesn't take so long, and it is cheaper to repair than get something new. And I think it's about, to some degree, I think, like, one thing that we want to do as well is help repair businesses. So it's not just about taking it to a community event, but you can take it to a business as well who are struggling. And so some financial incentives around that. So, for example, tax breaks, or like reduced VAT on repair, so it's cheaper from that perspective. There's so many different aspects to it. But I think those are some of the things that could change to help stimulate it a bit more.
Brilliant. Thanks, Neil. Does anyone have any other questions or thoughts?
Just a thought on top of that. There's another kind of force that's pushing in our direction, and that's the law of diminishing returns, particularly on phones. Every new generation used to be really different and wow everybody. Now it's almost impossible to tell what the newest version is doing differently from the previous one, because basically they're beginning to be quite similar. So people are keeping phones for much longer than they used to. They used to change them every year or two. Now they change them every three years or 4 years. So in a way, the kind of technology push is beginning to burn out. So people will be more inclined to keep what they've got and repair it and keep using it. And that does play into our hands a bit.
Thanks, Mike. Any other thoughts or questions or observations that people have?
I just was thinking about, on the question from Richard, that there is a huge growth in the resale market. So for example, we are seeing in fashion, there are apps like Depop and Vinted and lots of secondhand clothing. And we are seeing that in other areas as well, with tech and with furniture, etc. And at least in the fashion space, this whole idea of buying secondhand is becoming very desirable and almost trendy. And I wonder how can we do that for repairs, to make repairs very desirable and a very cool thing to do. And it seems that, especially for millennials and Gen Zs, being environment friendly is actually quite a cool thing to do. And how can we add repair to that, you know, that sort of mindset? I think could be quite an interesting way to you know, maybe in some way address the David versus Goliath issue.
Thank you, Mastak. That's brilliant. Nice to loop in the sewing and fashion side, which we haven't got in the room at the moment, but it's a really interesting connection in terms of how people respond. Dermot and then Neil.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to say something that occurred to me in relation to that, because we were talking in our breakout room about the economic viability of repairs and how, you know, the part and the time and everything adds up to making it cheaper to go down to Argos and buy a new one. However, there are a lot of discarded items that are easy to repair if there was a kind of, I'm going to nick Joe's expression, if there was a pipeline for those to go for free to someone who could repair them, do a certified repair, and then sell them again at a reasonable price. That might be that might actually have some viability. It's still people throwing it away and replacing it, but at least there's some value for the person who repairs it. It just occurred to me. That's idle thoughts.
Neil.
Oh yeah, just to follow up on Mastak's point of making repair cool and interesting. I mean, it's maybe happening a little bit that it's coming more into kind of public consciousness, and there's TV shows like The Repair Shop and things like that. I personally really like this thing, and I think it has come more from fashion originally, but like the idea of visible mending. So like you fix something, you patch up your jeans or whatever, but you make it really, you know, like a really bright color, your patch or whatever, or if you're fixing your phone or your camera or something, you use Sugru, this colorful glue, so people can see that you fixed it. I really like that. And I think maybe to some element there's a bit of like you said, around millennials being interested and more concerned about this, but maybe an educational aspect as well. And we do some work in schools, and it's like teaching repair and maybe teaching some of these values along with it to kids to grow up with those views and opinions.
Thanks, Neil. I'm going to add something into the chat. It's there's a story, I think, to be told as well about, it's a series of, well, this is only one of them, but it's a series of 3 programs on BBC called The Men Who Made Us Spend. And it's the story of planned obsolescence. And it's a story of how companies started making things that would then fall apart in order to make us buy more of them. And it's a really great story, actually. I mean, it's depressing because we fell for it for many, many years. But I think sharing that story of we've been had really, and making us understand that. And for me, it was watching that and thinking, hang on a minute, why am I falling for this kind of thing that I have to keep buying things? It was one of the big influences in me reducing my consumption. But I put the YouTube in there if anyone's interested. Is there any other thoughts that people have, or anything buzzing around people's minds?
Can I say something?
Yeah.
So actually I joined the chat very late, sorry, but so my husband has been, well, he was a policy advisor on climate change for the government for many years, not anymore. And we have a lot of data. I mean, he's still working in policy and data and everything else, but the repair of things it's very important, but there's a lot more things that we could do to limit our carbon emissions. I mean, way more things, and of course repair is very good, but it costs more to repair than to buy another new kettle, right? I think. I still buy new things rather than repair, because nobody repairs things. So what's the solution? I mean, I try to be as carbon neutral as I possibly can, and lots of people do, but what can we do that actually works for normal families that work and go and have kids? And because if things break, you need a replacement right away. So what can you do?
Joe?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I feel like the movement that particularly the Restart community and other similar kind of initiatives are driving is like, I feel like there's more journey there, and it's sort of something that I feel like there's been a few strands tonight that have been a little bit like this. What would happen if you had someplace in your community where people could come like Monday to Friday and get things fixed, rather than occasionally at the weekend? Or we were delivering 6 repair parties a year, and it's sort of like that bit more scaling up, a little bit more professionalizing, having some sort of repair shop in your community that's very focused on that. And of course, that's also tying back in with old skills as well that were used to be there. But I think there is definitely, and I think there's hunger for that. And there's I know that Greener, Cleaner Bromley, which are sort of like not a transition time, but a fantastic new initiative. They've just taken over a shop in the shopping centre in Bromley town centre, and they're looking at this kind of thing too. And hopefully they're going to have a library of things. But all that kind of, I could just see that all clicking together in some way.
Yeah, I guess my observation in the broader question about climate change is, of course, there are millions of things that need to happen, and this is just one small part of what needs to happen. But this is what we're talking about tonight. So I think probably with 10 minutes to go on the clock, we probably can't take on the whole of climate change in this discussion. But Neil, I think you might have something to say.
Yeah, I was going to make the same point really, Hilary, that in terms of repair, yes, I think it's just one part of a bigger puzzle. And there's so many other things that need to change as well. And it's by no means a solution to the problem by itself. It's such a huge problem. I think with regards to the cost and the ease of repair, that's something that the Right to Repair campaign is trying to change, so that it does become the easier option to repair something. There's a repair shop on your corner on the corner of your high street, on the high street, and you can just take the thing that's broken in, and it's cheaper than going to Argos and getting the new one. And that's a system change thing, which yeah, is harder to crack, but it's about making it easier to repair, making it the default option, essentially.
I do love, Hilary, in the chat, Dermot's idea. You might need a courtesy kettle while yours is being repaired. Imagine that, a whole shed load of courtesy items so you don't miss a beat, you don't miss a cup of tea while your kettle's broken.
I thought that was a brilliant combination of share and repair. It was just like bringing the whole thing together, and this idea of having it all in one space. You know, when you used to be able to repair things, I used to get stuff repaired all the time, and I think we just need. I mean, the other thing about the number of people involved. I mean, we were literally bursting at the seams the last one we held 18 months ago, and we'd moved to doing 4 a year, and we were stepping up from that, and we just were turning people. We went with 3 hours solid, kind of repair, and more people coming through the door. So it was really, you know, it was becoming incredibly popular by that point. So yeah, we were running out of fixers. I think we need more fixers too. Okay, I'm aware that we're coming towards 9 o'clock, so I think we'll kind of come down, we'll wind down to a close, and Richard's going to kind of take us into the close of the session. But I just wanted to mention that Share and Repair, the Repair Week was the first thing of our kind of programme of events for this year, and we're going to have another Repair Week. In fact, we're going to call it Repair Fest, and it's going to be in October, and I think it is October the 23rd onwards, and we might actually extend to 10 days like we did this time, because we'll have too many things to pack in. So Repair Fest in Tooting is from the 23rd of October, and we will have a restart party. And we're also planning to have a photographic competition to celebrate the wonderful people who repair and make and mend. And we're going to do a very public kind of celebration of them as individuals, working with local photographers to take their pictures and put them out there. So watch out for those things. And if you want to get involved in anything, if you've got ideas, you know, just get in contact with us. And I'm going to hand over to Richard to take us into the close of the evening. But it's been so great to see you all here. But Richard, over to you.
Great. Yes. Thank you so much for the evening and the questions and discussion and thoughts and challenge. Great to challenge these things. I'm a true believer in healthy challenges to this work. But something we've done with Green Drinks a little bit is just give a moment after had a huge injection of inspirational ideas, or heard more about the spirit of projects like Restart Projects and Library of Things, is just to have a moment ourselves. No one's going to hold you to this at all. But just a moment, literally a minute in silence. I'll time it to look after us. Just to think about what you're motivated to do around what you've heard tonight. Perhaps that's on the personal scale, perhaps that's in the community. In Tooting, we have a lot of Ballamites here on the call as well, so maybe in Balham as well. But just a minute to go, okay, what does this mean for me? And it could be honouring the challenge that came in at the end there. It could be about actually, this isn't what my role is. That's what I've learned tonight. It could be like that, but it will be different for all of us. And I'd encourage you just to take that moment with a pen and a piece of paper. Something like that sometimes helps. But I'm not going to ask you, we're not going to share after. This is just for you to think about what you've heard tonight. So yeah, just in silence, if you could, I'll time it to look after us. Don't worry, it will be a minute. Yeah, just think about all the wonderful inputs we've had tonight. Here we go. Okay, I just invite you back to this space with your thoughts, your personal thoughts, and just invite you to give a warm thanks to Hilary facilitating tonight, and of course Neil and Joe for bringing their stories and expertise. Thanks a million. You guys, really, really cool. We'll see you again soon. And yeah, to stay in touch, I've popped the Twitter handle in the chat there. There's also, is it actually launched, Hilary? The website people can see. But is it officially launched? This is our new website, which we haven't said anything boo to a goose about yet, apart from ourselves. So there you go, check that out. And we'll obviously put a good section in there about the Repair Fest coming in the autumn. But thanks so much. You're welcome to drop off your mutes and just say good night and thank you. Use your wonderful voices, but we'll see you next time.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
That's brilliant stuff.
Bye.
See you in person soon, hopefully.
See you all.
Do you want to stop recording, Rich?